Hey everybody, welcome back to the Stitch Sessions. This week we have a fabulous, funky tutorial on this hat. You probably saw me in last week's episode stitching it up with Paul. It is super easy, fantastic, and perfect for beginners. I've called this the super easy stitch hat, beanie, toque, whatever you want to call it. So it has a little bit of wonderful give here. You can slouch it in the back and be really cool, or you can actually pull it down a bit more and fold over the rim here. If you really like your hats, if you really like your hats a bit more snug, covers the ears great. I'm super excited to get you guys started on this. And don't forget, we upload every Wednesday. So it's either a tutorial of some kind, or sometimes I have a guest and we stitch it up and have what we call a stitch session conversation. So if you like the way we present our material, make sure to share it with your friends. We'd love to increase our crochet family. And click that subscribe button and turn on your notification bells so you'll know exactly when we upload our latest video. But in the meantime, on to more important things. We got to get cooking on this hat. So let's grab our materials and let's get stitching. Okay, in order to make your super easy stitch toque, you are going to need 100 grams of a medium size 4 yarn. Now I use this fantastic Peyton's Canadiana, and it took me this exact ball to do my first toque. So if you pick up one of these, you will definitely get exactly one nice toque. Okay, so you will also need a pair of scissors, a darning needle, and for this project, I'm going to be using a 5.5 millimeter hook. To begin, we are going to start with a slip knot. So I just need to find the center of my yarn here. Whoop. So I know that when I made this one, I had to chain 45 chains from the bottom area of my eye to the crown of my head. So the reason why I say the bottom area of my eye is because we're creating this little rim here. The toque is designed that it can be worn with the brim folded, or you can wear it just straight and make it a slouchy beanie hat like that. So there's two really neat ways of wearing this hat. So I made mine fairly relaxed in length. So 45 chains is what I'm going to start with. Of course, first I'm going to start with a slip knot. Oops. I'm going to start with a slip knot first. And once I've secured my slip knot, I'm going to chain 45. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now when I do this chaining, I'm going to be aware of not being too tight with my gauge, okay? So I'm just going to keep it nice and relaxed because the design of this hat is to remain fairly relaxed. So you can see it's got some nice stretch going on there. So we just want to keep it nice and even. So go ahead and chain up your number of chains that you need, and I will meet you at the beginning of the next section. Once you have your desired number of chain stitches, in my case it's 45, we are going to chain one more. So we'll do another chain, and this is going to help us turn our work to start doing single crochets into each and every stitch across. So now from the second chain from the hook, that's the first, this is the second, you're going to insert your hook and do a single crochet. Okay, into the next stitch you will do another single crochet. And again, I'm being really nice and relaxed with the stitches, and this yarn is fabulous to work with, I have to say. It's just got this really lovely give to it, almost like a bit of a stretchiness to it, and it's nice and soft. So you're just going to continue doing 1 single crochet into each and every stitch all the way until you get back to the very first chain. So for me, I will have to make sure that I end up with 45 single crochets at the end. So whatever number you chose, maybe it was 40, maybe it was 50, just make sure to count at the end and that you're going to have the same number of stitches. And I will meet you when it's time to get to the other side. Okay, we're coming up to the end of our row. I'm just in my last stitch here. And so this is the end of our first row. Okay, so I have 45 single crochets all along this row. So now what's going to happen is the same thing we're going to do for as many rows as you need to create the perimeter around your head. So we are going to work this, so we're going to build row, 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 because eventually it's going to sit like this and we're going to fold it around your head and then we're going to sew up the seam just like this. Okay, so this hat was worked this way. Okay, so really this is this way. And then you create as much length as you need so that you can eventually wrap it around your head. So it will take some, once you start like getting a bit of length, you'll start wanting to wrap it around your head to see if it fits. Okay, but anyway, back to the task at hand. We finished that first row. And so we're going to continue always doing single crochets. We're going to chain 1 and turn our work. But here's where it's going to be a little bit different. We are not going to work into the typical stitch. So if we worked into the typical full stitch, you're going to see that we've got those 2 loops there, the full V. In this project, we are only going to work into the back loops. So the loops are those V's at the top. So you've got the back loop is the one furthest away from you. The forward loop is the one closest to you. So we are going to work into all of the back loops of these stitches. Okay, so we're going to find we're not going to work into that very first one because remember that's the bottom of this first chain 1. We're going to go into the next one, and instead of going underneath, we're going to go on top and go through the back loop here. Okay, we'll then yarn over, pull through, see how it stretches up a bit? Don't worry about that, that's totally normal. Yarn over and pull through 2. Okay, so now it doesn't look like too much, but once we do a few more, you'll see the effect this gives. So into the next stitch, we work through the top into the back loop, pull through 2. So you're going to work the single crochet just like normal, except we're going in through the back loop of the top of the stitch there, and again going in through the back loop. And don't worry that that loop gets stretched out. It does relax once you get into the project a little bit more. Okay, so I'll work a few more of these so you can see what the effect, this really, really cool effect it has when you work into the back loops. Okay, so you should already starting to see that it's creating this little ridge here, and that's exactly what we want. So it creates this ribbed effect, and that's how we got these ridges here. And it's strictly from doing single crochets, the whole hat's made of single crochets worked into the back loops of the stitch. And that's it. That's why I call this the super easy stitch hat, because it is super easy. So you're going to do that going all the way to the end, and I'll just meet you at the end to just remind you about the turning. but then the rest is all the same from there. So you'll do as many rows as you need or want, and then we'll meet up again to talk about how to put it all together. But go ahead and finish this row, and I'll meet you at the end. So I'm just coming up to the end of my row here. So this is my second last stitch. And then this is my last. Now this one was actually pretty decent to identify. Sometimes it gets pulled a bit tight because that was actually the chain 1 to turn. So I lucked out here. Sometimes this is tight, but just if you're ever uncertain, you know what you got to do. You got to count back your stitches. Okay. So there, see, there I pulled it accidentally tighter. So that is our first row. Well, actually, it's our second row. But see, it's created this, the ridge effect here. Okay, and what it does is when you work into the back loop, it just kind of pushes the other loop more to the forefront. So for now, if you look at the back, it doesn't really look too different. But once we turn over and we start working in the back loops again, you'll get this ridge going back and forth. Sometimes on the front, second time it's on the back. Front, back. So we finished this row. So you're going to do your chain 1, turn your work, and we will continue this formula all the way to the end again. Just remember when you chain 1, it's a little bit tricky to see here. Be careful that you don't tie that chain or pull it too tight, because then it'll get hard to see later on. So there's the chain 1, and there's your first back loop. We want to work into this one here to start off with. Okay, so there's the first one, there's the second one, and we go into the back loop. So those edges sometimes are the trickiest part, but then once you kind of continue moving through your work, it does get easier. Okay, so this is it. This is the whole pattern. Just single crochet into each and every stitch into the back loops only, and you're going to make as many rows as you need. I think for my hat that I had made here, I ended up doing 75 rows all the way around. So this is a great project if you just want to zone out, watch a bit of TV, because it's the exact same stitch. And once you get comfortable where to place your hook, and you almost don't even need to count your stitches, because it'll just, the ridge will come out nicely. See, it's creating a beautiful ridge. So that's it. It's a great project for meditating, that's for sure. So you're going to do rows and rows and rows, and when you've done your allotted number of rows, I will meet you there, and we're going to talk about how we're going to fasten our hat and put it all together. So for me, that's going to be 75 rows. So I will see you when I have done 75 rows. Okay, so I've actually decided to stop at 70 rows. So this is what our work looks like right now. And if I just bring this up a little closer, you can see all these beautiful ridges, and I love this yarn. It's just nice and stretchy. So what I've done is I've actually folded this over, because this is actually going to be the width of my hat, and I just made sure that this fits snugly around my head. And because you don't want it to be too loose, otherwise over time it'll just really loosen. You do want it to be a bit snug. So this is 70 rows. My first hat I did 75, but for whatever reason it's just a bit more stretched out, this one. So to put our hat together, notice I have not snipped my yarn here. We are going to fold it in half. And now what we're going to do is we are going to slip stitch all the way back down here. Okay, so I'm going to grab my hook and just going to pull this in a bit more. And let me just zoom in a bit. Okay, so I'm going to insert my hook. So I'm still going to work into the back loop So I want to match up all of my stitches here. So I did not chain one. I'm going to identify the very first stitch. So this would have been my foundation chain. So if it's a little bit tricky to see from the back, so just feel free to turn it over. So my very first stitch is this one here, okay, because that's the chain one coming up around. So what I'm going to do is I am actually going to go into the back loop of this very first stitch here, and I am going to find this first stitch here, which is this one, and I am going to go into what will be considered the front loop because it's the loop closest to me, and because this is the foundation chain row, the back loop is already occupied with the original stitches we worked with. So I have the back loop here and the front loop here, and so I insert my hook through both of them. So you will have 3 loops on the hook because this is your working loop, okay? That is totally a-okay. So then I will yarn over and I'm going to pull through all 3 of these loops. And so now we've secured the bottom edge of our hat together. And then we will go to the next stitch. So if you're ever unsure, just pull this apart. You can see that this one's been worked into. So now I'm going to insert into the back loop of the very next stitch. And then I want to identify the next stitch here. So I can see this one's been worked into, so the very next one is this one here. Again, you will have 3 loops on the hook, yarn over, and just pull through all 3. So you're slip stitching right into all of them. So you can't quite see what's happening just yet, but in a few more stitches you'll be able to see how it's taking shape here. So again, I identify the very next stitch, back loop of this one here, and I identify the next stitch in the opposite row there. Yarn over and pull through all 3. So we're slip stitching our way all the way up the side of the hat, and these edges are going to come together nicely. So I'm going to do that a few more times so that you'll start to be able to see how this is going to take shape. Into the back loop of my front piece and into, oops, so that one's been worked into. Sometimes it's hard to see. Into the front loop of the very next stitch. Yarn over, pull through all 3. Okay, you can see it's starting to seal up this edge here. So again, the next stitch, back loop, and front loop of the corresponding row, and pull through all 3. Back loop of the next stitch, front loop of the corresponding stitch, pull through all 3. And again, back loop and front loop, pull through, back loop and front loop, and pull through all 3. So I'm just going to pull this out a little bit here. So now you can see what I love about this is it blends right in, so it just looks like another ridge. And see how it's solidifying the side of your hat together. So if I do this, see how beautifully it just blends in? It just looks like another ridge. Love that. Okay, so that is what we're going to do all the way up the side until we get to the top. We're going to use this as the top of our hat. So we've got an end here. So I'm going to let you continue to do that, and I will meet you once we get to the top. Okay, so exciting. I'm coming up to the end here, and it looks like I counted my stitches perfectly. So this is my second last one, and I am going to go into the corresponding second last stitch, pull through all 3, And my very last stitch here, insert, get that tail out of the way, and my very last stitch on that side, and pull through all of them. So I've reached the top of my hat. So you can see it, kind of that seam will blend right in. But what I noticed too, if I turn this inside out, is the seam actually completely disappears. So you can see it just becomes like one of the ridges of the hat. Super cool. But I am going to turn it back out. So I am going to use this as the inside of my hat. And now is the moment of truth. This is where we're finally going to, whoops, I think I got myself all messed up here. This is where we're finally going to snip off. So let me just turn that. Ay, ay, ay. Got a little over, there we go. Inside. Okay, so I want it outside facing out. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to snip off my yarn, but I want to leave a nice long tail because now we're going to cinch in the top of our hat. So again, with this one, see, it's very similar layout here. And then what we did is we cinched the top in. So I just want to make sure that we leave a long enough tail. So the general rule that I do is I just kind of take one length and then another one, so double the length. I'm sure that's more than enough, but I always like to have extra as opposed to running short. So I'm just going to grab my scissors here and I am just going to snip. And I've got this little bit left over. I'm going to talk about that in a second. So I am going to pull through here and just tighten that up. And if you want, actually you can even just knot this short tail here at the end to this long one, just to give you a little extra security. I'm always one to get a little bit extra secure ends there myself. Okay, so now we are going to need a yarn needle. And we're going to feed our, oh, there's Mr. Sun. I'm going to feed our yarn through. And so now what we're going to do is you can see the ends of your rows here. So every second row is a ridge row and every second row is a non-ridge row. And you can see those gaps right there. So what I'm going to do is I am going to just insert the top of my needle at the end of each row and just weave it back and forth. So what I like to do actually is just catch underneath this one just so I get a little bit of extra fiber in there. So I just weave in and out, whoops, in and out, and in and out. Now you really want to make sure you stay close to the top. I made that boo-boo before when I dipped down too much. Actually, let me just take that out and do that again. So we do want to stay as close to the top as possible. So we weave in and we weave out. So see, I'm staying very close to this top edge here. In and out. And then I'll just pull it through as I go, and it slowly starts to cinch in. I don't want to wait till the very end to cinch, because then you could run the risk of having to really pull too hard, and sometimes it will make your yarn felt together, which is not good. So I'm going to continue weaving in and out and in and out. And then every few stitches, I just gently already start pulling and cinching. Okay, so again, I'm going to go in and out. Notice I'm skipping that gap because I want to gather more fiber here. In and out, but I also stay very close to the top edge here. And then pull through, and see, you can see it's starting, as you pull, it's starting to gather at the top. Okay, so you're going to just weave in and out all the way around, and I'll just meet you at the very end here, okay? And we'll talk about how to sew in the final top. So go ahead and I'll meet you in a few minutes. Okay, so I'm coming up to the end here, and see how there's still quite a gap there. So I'm just going to finish my last few little spots here, weaving in and out. And so really you don't want to have this kind of hole. So even if you need to just kind of push them a little bit over with your hands a little bit. Where's my yarn? There it is. And so this just helps to cinch things along. And you want to be careful here because it's easy to pull too hard and you could break your yarn. So there we go. So I think that's as tight as this one's going to get. So now what would happen, and this is why we have an extra long tail here, is you're now going to start sewing in to seal up the top here. Okay, so there's my little finger there. So a great way to do this right away is to go crossways and cross. So if I have the yarn here, I'm going to go right across the way, and I'm just going to insert my needle somewhere along the top there, pull it through, and that should already, boop, start cinching it in there. Okay, so I'll do it a couple of times, and sorry, this could get a bit bunched up, it might be harder to see, but you can see how I've crisscrossed here. So I'm going to pull that, and now I'm going to insert again and feed it through the other end here, just to really start tightening it up. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the opposite side. So I'm going to insert somewhere along here, and it doesn't really matter where, just as long as you catch enough fibers. And then I'm going to make sure I catch the other side here. So see, that's hiding there. So I want to catch this side here so that now it's going to pinch in. So I pull that in, there we go. So you can see, and that's just my little short tail stuck in there, that's okay. So you can see that it's now starting to close up this little opening here. So you're gonna have to do a few times because see this, there's still a little opening there. So now I'm gonna come back here, I'm gonna gather a little bit and then meet somewhere on the other side and, oops, and pull through. So I do this like, I don't know, I would say a million times, but just enough so that you feel that all the gaps are nicely closed in. Like I can see a little gap here. So I'm just going to go in here, insert, and come out somewhere around the other side and pull. Okay, so it just creates this nice gathering here, and we just want to cinch up all of our little, oh, there's our little short tail. And you can kind of weave, you know, sew over this as well. This one just kind of came out. So again, I'm going to insert, and I just really want to solidify this little cinched in end here. And of course, if you wanted to, you can add a little embellishment at the top of the hat afterwards, a little pom-pom or something like that. We're going to leave this one fairly plain because again, we call this the super easy stitch hat because it was very basic, very easy, no frills, and anybody can make this hat. Super beginner friendly. And there we go. So lots of weaving in. So this is looking pretty good. I think I'm going to do one more here on this end here.
So again, I would go to town and just continuously weave and weave and weave to keep this nice and secure. I do another one here. Pinch that in. And then maybe right now, oh yeah, I did sew in my short tail, I might start knotting it in. So now this time when I weave in, I will pull, and then I will just weave through here to start creating a little bit, whoops, a little bit of a knot. So I think I'm going to be done there. So good way to do this. Turn it back the right side now, and look at how the top came out. Really cool. So you can barely even tell where all the joins come together. Love that. So there's our hat. Like, there it is. So you can leave this edge exactly as is if you want it super, super plain. In this one, I did add a brim row, which I will do next with you guys. And this is just rows of single crochets into the full stitch. So notice there's no ribbing here, no ridges. And for me, I just like it. It's a nice little finishing touch. But lots of people, I know some of the girls in our crochet class, this is the project we've been working on, and one of them just left it plain like that, and she was super happy with it, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. So this hat is designed when you have it on that it can slouch. I know that that's still quite the in style. Or if you want to, you can put it snug over your head and then fold this rim up like that. So super, super cute. Love how easy this hat is. So for those of you that are happy with your hat as is, you can just fasten off your little tail here, weave it in, and you are done. Good to go. Now, those of you that want to add your little brim on, stick around, because we are going to add our little extra finishing touch here, and that's where this little bunch comes in handy, because you're thinking, that's why this hat is great. It took exactly 100 grams. This was a 100-gram ball. And I remember thinking, ay, I don't know if I'll have enough left over. Believe me, this puppy is going to give you this nice rim here. So stick around. We're going to get you started with the rim. Okay, so to start on our brim, I am going to work on this hat with the right side facing out, because I'm going to work in the round now, and I want all of the right side of the stitches to be facing out. So I've managed to find where my seam is, so you can't quite tell right away, but I know that if I turn over, there is my seam right here. It's a thicker ridge than the others. So I'm going to kind of start here and consider this the back. I'm going to start with a slip knot. Here is where my seam is. So I'm going to work my first one into the base here. So this is the side of the stitch. This is a non-ridge row. And I'm just going to do a slip stitch to secure my yarn. Okay. Then I will chain one and do a single crochet back into that same stitch. And yarn over. Don't worry that this is stretching out a bit. It's all going to come together when we seam it at the end. So now I'm going to work over my short tail. Now my next row is a ridge row, so it's got a little bit of thickness here. So I'm going to insert my hook somewhere. I'll find a spot to kind of nestle in there. And I like the fact that it's got quite a bit of chunk on here, so I know that this stitch will be really secure. And pull through. So there's my second single crochet. So see how that one's nestled quite nicely in there? So this is a non-ridge row, and usually you're going to see these little, because that was the chain one there, I like to try and find a bit more chunk. So I'm just going to dip a little bit below that to insert, yarn over to pull through. Whoops, get that tail out of the way. yarn over to pull through 2. So I just like the fact that it nestles itself a little deeper into the ridge there. So I'm going to do that again. Okay, so we were now into a ridge row. So again, there is some chunk there to work with. So I'm going to insert there to nestle my stitch in. Yarn over, pull through, yarn over and pull through 2. So that's my next single crochet going along. So this is going to create a nice little ridge around. So this is the non-ridge row. I'm going to just dip down a little bit to catch a bit more yarn. Yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through 2. And don't worry that it looks like there's a little gap. It will start to nestle in there. So now we're back to a ridge row. We put the hook through a bunch of the fibers there, pull through, yarn over, pull through 2. And I'm just working over my short tail here. So see, it's just giving it a really pretty, nice little straight edge, which I'm a big fan of. So now we were back into a non-ridge row. So see that little flimsy piece of yarn there, I kind of like to just dip down, get a little bit more fiber there, and yarn over, pull through 2. And now I'm in a ridge row, so it makes it a little easier. I got more to work with here. Insert. Whoop, keep that tail here. We want to hide you. Pull through 2. Non-ridge row, I dip down a bit. Keep that tail down. Yarn over. It's almost hidden. Pull through 2. So look at that. It's just creating this really, really pretty row here. And so this is it. You're going to just work in the round. You're going to do a few of these rounds. I think I ended up doing 6 in my other hat, or basically as many as would allow me with the amount of yarn I have left. So just single crochets. You could definitely do this with half double crochets if you like. I just chose to keep it really simple. Again, in line with what I named this hat, the easy stitch. Just one stitch we're using the whole time, just single crochets. So this is a great way to practice and get into the groove of your single crochet stitches. So let's get you to do that all the way around. So basically you will work this all the way. So we're working in the round all the way around until you meet back up with your first stitch. And then we'll talk about how you're going to slip stitch and then continue on to the next round. So we're now not working in rows anymore, we're working in rounds. So go ahead and finish your first round and we'll talk about how to get on to your next one. So here I am. I'm coming up to the end of my round here. So I am on stitch 69 and I can see I'm actually going to stitch two more, which is going to bring me to 70, and I'm going to go into here for 71. So sometimes that happens. You might squeeze an extra stitch in here and there, and I wanted to make sure to show that because a lot of times, especially when you're going from working from rows to rounds, it happens. You might snuggle an extra stitch in here and there. At the end of the day, it's not going to be a big deal because you're going to cinch this in and you've still got this really cool little effect here. Okay, so, but it is important to know how many stitches you have so that continuous rounds will stay equal. So that's my 71st round, my 71st stitch, and now I'm going to slip stitch into, notice I'm not going into this chain one, into the first single crochet, and I like doing that just to kind of snuggle this stitch right up next to the other. Okay, so that finishes my first round, and you will notice that the bottom kind of flares out a bit. And the reason why is because we worked into the back loops, it creates kind of this stretchy feel here. And so when we start crocheting into the edges, it just spreads out the edges a little bit more. Now, if you don't like this, what you can do is you can actually skip a stitch, and so you can single crochet into each ridge, skip here and crochet into the next one. So what that'll do is actually start bunching that in a little bit closer. So some people like it a little bit more snugger around where your face, or like around your forehead and face there. So again, that's a personal style. I actually don't mind it flaring out because then it just has a little extra give there. So that's me. You can do whatever you like. But now I'm going to go into round 2. So I will chain 1, and I am going to single crochet back into the same stitch of this one, because again, I like my joins to snuggle up nice and close there. And now it's extra easy peasy. I am just going to single crochet into each and every single stitch all the way around. And in this case, we're going into the full stitch here. So we're no longer working into the back loops. You could if you want to. It will create a ridge around this way, but I thought there's enough ridges going up and down here that to have a little bit more of a plain rim would just complement it very nicely. So very easy going, just insert and pull through 2. Insert and pull through 2. So you can do as many rows as you like. I know one of our crochet ladies, she only did 1 row and she was happy with that. In this particular instance, I believe I did 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 rows. Okay, so I was pretty happy with, you know, that thickness. I'm not quite sure, actually. I think there's slightly less in this ball than the other one, because I only did 70 rows, and so maybe I might only get to 2 rows, but we shall see. So just continue all the way around, single crochet into every single stitch. And again, if you want your rim to be a little bit snugger, what you can do is skip 1 and insert into the next one. So skip 1, insert into the next one. So this is a form of decreasing, and you can see it's already starting to bunch in a bit more, and it'll create a little bit of a ridge there. But I'm not going to do that with my hat. I'm just going to continue and keep it nice and straightforward into each and every single stitch. Okay, so I am coming up to the end of my 6th row, and now I'm just going to slip stitch into the first stitch of that row, and I am ready to fasten off. And I'm going to snip my yarn, and full disclosure, for some strange reason, I ended up having to get another ball. I'm not sure if maybe they gave me a little extra on this one, or if they shortchanged me on the ball for this color. But I know that when I did this gray hat, it was a 100-gram ball, and I actually used right the very last bit of it. So just a little note on that. So this is a 100-gram ball. Should have given me a whole hat, but for some reason at the end of 2 rows of my brim, I completely ran out. So that's just the scoop with that. But in any case, got it all sorted out. So now we're just going to snip your yarn, and you're just going to fasten off and then weave in your end, and we are done. We have the easy stitch, or what I like to call the super easy stitch hat. So you can wear it just like that, like a slouch beanie. I think I've demonstrated this already. Or you can fold the rim up and wear it a little bit more snugly around your head. So there you go, guys. I hope that you have loved doing this project and have enjoyed learning how to do the single crochet stitches into the front loops. And if you have any questions, make sure to leave me a comment in the comment box or just email me directly at info@crochetcrafty.com. We're looking forward to seeing you guys next week for our next stitch session. Take care, everyone.